In 1989, one academic paper gave us a word that would totally change how we talk about justice and identity: intersectionality. But have you ever wondered where that huge idea actually came from? Well, to find out, we have to go right to the source: Kimberlé Crenshaw's incredible paper, Demarginalizing the Intersection of Race and Sex. So our story doesn't start in a university classroom. Nope, it starts in a courtroom, with a lawsuit that seemed, on the face of it, pretty straightforward. But the way the court ruled was, well, it was baffling. And it exposed this massive blind spot in how the law worked. Okay, so get this. It's 1976, and 5 black women decide to take on General Motors. Their argument was that the company's last hired, first fired policy was completely unfair to them. And the reason why is rooted in a really simple but totally crucial piece of history. Just think about that for a second. General Motors literally didn't hire any black women until the Civil Rights Act of 1964 forced them to. So naturally, any system based on seniority would put those women at the very bottom of the list. When layoffs hit, guess who was first to go? It feels like a total slam dunk case of discrimination, right? A double whammy even. But that's not how the court saw it. Not at all. And just like that, the case was dismissed. The court basically said, look, we don't see black women as a category. It was willing to see black people as a group that needed protection and women as another group, but it refused to see that black women could be facing a unique kind of harm all their own.
And that right there is the big mystery. How is it possible that someone being discriminated against for 2 different reasons ends up with 0 legal protection? It's a paradox. And this is the exact puzzle that Kimberlé Crenshaw set out to solve. Crenshaw dug into this, and she identified the core of the problem. She called it the single-axis framework. Basically, the law was set up to deal with discrimination on one road at a time. You were either on the race road or the gender road. It had no idea what to do when someone was standing where those 2 roads crossed. And this slide just breaks down the court's bizarre logic perfectly. When the women tried to make a claim about sex discrimination, the court pointed to the white women working at GM and said, see, we hire women, no problem here. But when they tried to make a claim about race discrimination, the court pointed to the black men on the assembly line and said, see, we hire black people, no problem here either. The black women fell right through the cracks of the law. So in short, that's the single-axis framework. It makes you choose, are you making a claim as a woman or as a black person? The system just couldn't process the fact that their experience was shaped by being both of those things at the exact same time. And just in case you thought the DeGraffenreid case was some weird one-off, Crenshaw shows it was a pattern. You see it again and again. In another case, a court said a black woman couldn't represent all women because her experience was just too specific. In yet another, a court said black women couldn't represent all black employees because their needs might conflict with black men. In every single instance, they were just erased from the equation. So, faced with this legal brick wall, Crenshaw realized she needed a better way to explain what was going on. She needed a metaphor, something simple and powerful that would make it all click. And the analogy she came up with is now famous, and for good reason. It perfectly captures how these different forces can collide. I want you to picture an intersection. Okay, so racism is like traffic speeding down one street. Sexism is traffic coming down the other street. Now, a black woman is standing right in the middle of that intersection. If she gets hit, what caused it? Was it the racism traffic or the sexism traffic? The old single-axis way of thinking says you have to pick one. But the reality is she got hit because she was in the intersection, vulnerable to traffic from both directions. And that, right there, is intersectionality. It's not about adding up different biases, like racism plus sexism. It's a framework for seeing that collision point. It's a way to understand that the experience of being a black woman isn't just the black experience plus the woman experience. It is a totally distinct experience created by that intersection. But Crenshaw didn't stop there. She argued that this blind spot wasn't just a problem in the courts. She saw the exact same single-axis thinking holding back the very social movements that were supposed to be fighting for justice. Both feminist and anti-racist movements were often failing the people who lived in the middle. To illustrate her point, she takes us all the way back to 1851. Imagine this. You're at a women's rights conference. Men in the audience are heckling, shouting about how women are too fragile for public life, how they need to be protected. The mood is tense. And then, a black abolitionist and former slave named Sojourner Truth stands up to speak. And with just a few sentences, she completely dismantled the argument.
The hecklers were talking about a very specific kind of womanhood, a delicate, privileged white womanhood. But Sojourner Truth held up her own life, her own body, her own pain as proof that their definition was incomplete. Her experience was totally invisible in their debate. What's so crucial to get here is that she wasn't just talking to the men. Her speech was also a challenge to the feminist movement itself, which often focused on the experiences of white women while ignoring how race completely changed what it meant to be a woman in America. It was an early warning that even movements for liberation can have their own blind spots. So after all this, the court cases, the history, we get to the big question. Why does this one idea still matter so much today? Well, because it's not just some abstract theory. It's a practical tool for seeing the world more clearly and finding better solutions to real problems. The real magic of this framework is what it lets you do. It provides a lens to finally see the people who are being erased. It shows you how these overlapping identities create unique challenges. And it forces us to look at who's most vulnerable, because that's where you can really understand how a system of power is working or not working. It proves that sometimes the sum of racism and sexism is actually something else entirely. And that leaves us with one last thing to think about. Crenshaw gave us this incredible lens to see the intersection of race and gender. But the power of her idea is that it doesn't stop there. You can apply it to class, to disability, to sexuality, to you name it. So the real question she leaves for all of us is this: what other crucial intersections are we still failing to see? And who's being harmed while we look the other way?